Life as a man is not easy. Every day we're faced with new challenges, more responsibilities, and high expectations. That's why it's crucial to develop habits that put us in the best position to excel. And whether you realize it or not, we all have habits that we adhere to on a consistent basis. But here's the thing, some of these habits might be holding us back without us even realizing it. From the way we approach fitness to mental health to how we handle stress, even to how we connect with others. So today it's time to shed light on some of these bad habits so that we can take the first step towards breaking free from them. All right, so I know what you're expecting, right? Alcohol, weed, drugs, porn, everybody has talked about it, and it wouldn't be a bad habit video if I was to not include that within this one. But instead of making these separate sort of categories, I'm just gonna group it all together into cheap dopamine. Consuming cheap dopamine is clearly a bad habit that a lot of people face and that a lot of people do. Cheap dopamine is defined that anything that gives pleasure that you didn't have to really work for. So that's why recreational drugs, porn, even short form content on social media are all forms of cheap dopamine. And me personally, I've been watching a lot of podcasts on dopamine, and even I've read some long form books really going into the dopamine and why people do things. And basically what I discovered is that dopamine in itself is just a neurotransmitter. Everybody has it, and everybody has levels of dopamine within them. So basically whenever you consume cheap dopamine, it causes spikes within your dopamine, and everybody has some sort of baseline. And then whenever you have spikes within your dopamine, what you're gonna do is drop below baseline. The reason this is bad is because it kills your drive and motivation. That's pretty much the most negative aspect of it. Yes, of course, drugs, alcohol, all this stuff is horrible for your health too, but we all know that. What really matters is that it just overall kills your drive as a man. Now, I'm not gonna make this whole video about dopamine or why you guys should stop, all these different vices, because more than likely you know that they're bad for you. So instead, what I'm gonna do is teach you how to manage them effectively so that you probably still engage in at least a few vices, because everybody has a vice, believe it or not. Even me myself, I've struggled with some of these pleasure seeking sort of cheap dopamine activities. And though I've been successful in my life, once I found a way to actually manage them, that's when I was able to actually sort of break free from them, and from there have more drive and motivation. So the first thing you want to do is don't stack vices. So for example, a lot of people, they'll smoke nicotine while also drinking, and then they'll go watch porn, and then they'll smoke weed. You're basically stacking all these cheap dopamine sources together, and that is definitely bad, because after you get off the high from that, you're gonna feel like doing nothing at all. And then from there, you're gonna feel depressed, maybe even a little anxious, and overall just put yourself in a very bad spot. So if you are gonna engage in any of these cheap dopamine activities, literally only do it one at a time. Then another thing I like to do is actually what I call backloading my dopamine. So in fitness, a lot of people, they backload their carbs like in the latter part of the day. I do the same thing in terms of cheap dopamine. So what I'll do is at beginning part of the day, I'll go out on my walk. What I won't do is I won't be on my phone, I won't consume any social media, I won't do any of those cheap dopamine activities, literally until all my work is done for the day. I even mentioned this about working out, guys, how you should stop fapping and watching porn before you work out, because when you go to your workout, you're gonna have less energy, your drive's gonna be lower, your strength's gonna be lower. All that stuff is bad. So if you are going to engage in it, do it at the latter part of the day whenever you completed everything, so that way it doesn't affect the things that are actually producing income for you. And then lastly, a few days out of the week, you want to engage in no vices whatsoever. Literally, there should be at least a handful of days out the week where you're not doing anything at all. You're not consuming a lot of social media. Maybe you take a break from caffeine. Just overall try to have at least one day out of the week to where nothing, just cleanse, just pure. And trust me, you will start to feel a lot better. And this is the first step towards breaking free from those bad habits that are actually holding you back. Now, the next bad habit is what I like to call the Sigma mentality, that lone wolf mentality. Us men, we are taught to do everything by ourselves, how everything is just based upon us. We have no emotional support. A lot of guys are lonely as ever nowadays with no friends. And me, myself, I totally relate to this. I went from being in the most social part and time of my life in high school and college, always being a part of groups, always being around people, whether it be roommates, friends. It wasn't until I graduated college, I came here to a new city in Florida, and I was completely by myself. Like at first it was fine. Like I was used to the new experience and my real adult life. But after a while, I started to realize like, man, this lifestyle is definitely sort of different. In some cases, I'll find myself literally not speaking a word to anybody, sometimes over the course of multiple days. And that was a big shift for me. But then I would cope and I'll tell myself like, yo, this is lone wolf mentality. Like I'm a Sigma, like I'm okay with being alone. And I would feel like I would sort of lie to myself. And from there, it stemmed into periods of depression. I want to say like I was actually like clinically depressed, but it stemmed into periods of just loneliness in a way. And then from there, I would cope with cheap dopamine and or other vices to sort of cope for that loneliness feeling that I was feeling. Even when it came to like casual dating and casual sex, which in itself is a vice depending on how you look at it. So I definitely have experienced this sort of Sigma mentality. And overall, I do feel like it's more of a negative habit than a positive one. Yes, men should learn how to be by yourself and be alone, but having a support group and some sort of network, whether it be friends, family, or even a therapist, is actually healthy, guys. And what I've noticed is that women are a lot more likely to have these support groups and actually seek out for it way more than men are. And I do believe overall that is a big issue. That is why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp's mission is to make therapy more accessible and more affordable. And this is an important mission because if you guys don't know, finding a good therapist in your local area is pretty difficult. And BetterHelp makes it a lot easier because the whole process is done online and it's remote. And just by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can actually match you with a therapist in just a few days. Guys, it's so easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist, and now you have access to it by using the link down below. Using the link does help support the channel, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp so that you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. And because finding a therapist is a little like dating, if you don't really fit with that therapist, which is a common thing in therapy, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost or without stressing about insurance. Honestly, throughout my periods of sort of depressional states, I wish this sort of existed because I definitely would have used it. In fact, if I ever feel that way again, I'm definitely going to use this service. So if you find yourself struggling or in a bad state, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. You can click the link down below in the description or visit betterhelp.com/Austin Dunham. Now the next bad habit, guys, and this stems from the cheap dopamine aspect of stuff, and that is seeking instant gratification. Nowadays, especially with TikTok and all these forms of instant gratification, even just accessing porn instantaneously, a lot of people are programmed to think that anything they want is going to be given out easily and or fast. But guys, I can assure you and I can tell you that anything that is actually worth getting, you're going to have to put a lot of effort and time into it. Anything that comes easily is usually never respected. And for that reason, I would much rather things come slowly to me than for me to get handed out on a platter. I always give this example of how as my finances start to increase and overall as my even access to attractive women start to increase over time, I'm glad it happened slowly for me because it overall taught me how to manage it a lot better in terms of money versus somebody who kind of just wins the lottery overnight and they started from a position of brokenness, or even somebody who gets famous and now they have access to all these high quality women that they didn't have before. Usually they act stupid and don't know how to manage it because it happened too fast for them. So guys, understand that there are no handouts, especially as a man. Everything you have to work towards, and trust me, it'll just make the reward that much sweeter in the long run. And trust me, there is no such thing as an overnight success. In some cases, rare cases, there could be, but for the most part, people think that people are an overnight success, but they forgot to look at all the times they put in, the effort and hard work over years of time. I think a big example is anybody who blows up on YouTube. A lot of people will see their videos sort of in the moment now, but they don't look at all the videos they've been posting for years that nobody watched, right? It seems like an overnight success, but the truth is they just put in the consistent effort over a long period of time and they weren't expecting instant gratification or handouts. They just genuinely loved what they're doing. So I challenge you, in any endeavor that you're doing, even when it comes to building muscle, right? I'm on a bulk right now, and I'm not expecting to get huge in the next 2 weeks or month. In my mind, I'm literally thinking about this as like a 2-year process. Whenever you start to expand your time horizon, trust me, overall, you'll just have more appreciation towards the things you're working towards, and it'll just make the process a lot more sweeter because everybody knows the journey is a lot more rewarding than the reward itself. Now, the last bad habit, guys, is being a victim. Guys, we gotta get rid of the victim mentalities because you gotta understand everything that you have in your life right now is because that's what you wanted. Brandon Carter, which is a good mentor of mine, mine, and you guys probably know him too, but he stated something that really, really resonates with me, is that we don't rise to our ambitions, we're gonna fall to our standards. And so that's a really powerful quote, because everything you have in your life right now is a reflection of your standards. It's what you actually want. If you guys really wanted to make $10,000 a month, you would in every way possible figure out a way to do that. You wouldn't blame your circumstances, you wouldn't blame your race, you wouldn't blame your network, you wouldn't blame your environment, because I guarantee you there's somebody out there that has succeeded in the exact position that you're in right now, in anything you want to get good at. So that doesn't only include financial, though that is the most relatable, but it includes with women, it includes with confidence, it includes with your muscle, your body. Anything that you want to get better at, you're gonna just simply fall to your standards. So what you simply gotta do is get rid of the victim mentality, and from there, increase your standards. Instead of saying, I want to make $5,000 a month, I want to make $10,000 a month, you say, I will make no less than $5,000 a month. I will make no less than $10,000 a month. And once you increase your standards and you kind of reshift your mindset towards that, trust me, the way you go about your goals and your total ambition towards it will just be at a whole different level. Me, myself, I've realized I've naturally tend to have really high standards for myself. Even in terms of fitness, I'll tell myself, you know, every guy should be able to do 15 pull-ups. For some reason, that is a controversial statement. I have no idea how, but people will literally get offended when you say you should be able to do 15 pull-ups. And that's because people's standards are overall just low, and they have that victim mentality. Oh, I'm not strong enough to do 15 pull-ups, or how can I do that? That's impossible. When in reality, getting to 15 pull-ups, bro, is not hard at all. You just have to lose your weight and you have to train for it. But once again, people are lazy, they don't want to put in the effort, and they want instant gratification. All these habits kind of play into themselves and overall just create a weak man. That's why if you want to be the strongest version of yourself, you have to just get rid of the victim mentality, and in combination, start actively thinking about just some of these bad habits that you're doing right now and try to break free from them in little bits at a time. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to check out BetterHelp down below if you want an online therapy service. And once again, you can get 10% off your first month by using the link down below. Definitely be sure to check them out. I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Peace.